Hello and welcome back to the demo sections of the Social Intelligence Tech Demo Day. I'm Dr. Gillian Nate, the founder of the Social Intelligence Lab, and today, over the next 2 days, we're bringing you Social Intelligence Tech Demo Day to celebrate everything that's good and great with social data analysis. Today, just now, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Michael Howard, who is the co-founder and CEO of a company called Nichefire. Now, you may not have heard of Nichefire before, but you're about to get to know them very, very well. So Nichefire are slightly different from our social listening tools that we've been seeing a lot of this morning, and they can help you to discover, this is a word I cannot say, but they can help you discover differentiated messaging that matters most to your customers, so to help you get cut through online. So Michael, I've managed to say it now once, so I'm going to hand over to you, Michael. I will be sitting in here in the background, but enjoy your demo. Everyone, go to the stage, chat, and if you've got any questions, hop into the chat or the Q&A, and I'll pick those up at the end. I'll see you soon. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you. Thanks, Gillian. Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining today. I'm really excited to share a bit about Nichefire. So what is Nichefire? We help clients see and act on previously invisible competitive and consumer insights using social intelligence. Our proprietary AI technologies study millions of data points from online sources, and our expert consultants package it up into useful recommendations and dashboards. We all know there's a lot of data on the web, from social media sites, from forums, from review sites. There are millions of conversations on those platforms and thousands of brands trying to be a part of those conversations each day. And our goal is to turn this data into something useful. So we operate as a backend platform for social intelligence research and offer the raw analysis and consulting to help you rapidly draw conclusions from those insights. We use our proprietary AI technologies to provide market knowledge on competitors and consumer behavior. So one fact that I actually am bewildered by is that humans are presented 5,000 forms of branding and persuasion each day. With this much stimuli, it's incredibly important that we understand how to capture and retain attention, and eventually recurring attention. Because whether you think so or not, there are external forces competing with you for that attention, and it's not just your competitors. So I have a couple examples of language I pulled from some different advertising that I'd like to share. Now, I'm not picking any specific brands here, but I wanted to share this just as an example. The first one comes from banking. Get cash back and 0% APR for 12 months when you sign up for a credit card or for whatever product that is. Then this one comes from insurance. So get great low rates when you bundle home and auto. Now, could you tell me which companies those statements come from? It's actually not any particular bank or insurance company. It's many banks, many insurance companies are currently using this sort of language in their messaging. But that just makes it that much more important that building and understanding your differentiation matters. No amount of audience analysis and no amount of social listening will compel a consumer to buy your product or service over another if you aren't able to demonstrate why they should. So when those customers see you as different or see you as better, you win. So now we're kind of getting into that realm of benchmarking, competitive analysis, market analysis, that sort of thing. And now when I say benchmarking or competitive analysis with social intelligence as the context, this is not just determining who has the most followers or who has the most engagement, who has the most mentions. This is thoughtful and strategic analysis of brand messaging and consumer response to that messaging. It's analysis of the deliberate activity of brands and organizations and the analysis of consumer communities and alternative markets that make an impact on our businesses. It's also using our competitors and the market to validate our decisions, to make sure that we're going to receive the maximum output of what we put in. Because we can learn a lot from the successes and failures of other organizations, and we can develop operational strengths off that. And it also focuses on zigging where others zag, like finding that white space. It's really important that we understand our audience and what topics are relevant, but it's also important to understand where we fit in that mix of things. What's our differentiator in the sea of messaging, that sort of thing. And this is what Nichefire specializes in. Wherever there's discourse between consumers and brands, Our platform analyzes that information, and we supply rapid insights from that using what we call AI-powered human intelligence. So what does AI-powered human intelligence mean? Well, the world is not quite developed enough to have AI tell you what to do without first funneling it through humans. And so all of the complexities of AI, including models, data, the algorithms, and stuff like that that are prepared there, are funneled through our experts in data science and our experts in consumer research so that the insights are upfront for you. So this allows us to customize the insights to your unique use case. It allows us to continuously innovate for you using the latest and greatest methodologies in data science. And it also allows us to continuously improve the robust quality of the insights and accuracy you're receiving. And in fact, we've been able to help our clients establish competitive advantages in their marketing strategies, identify strengths and weaknesses in their employee or recruitment strategies, and help them find opportunities for new markets and products, all using this sort of approach. So let's dive in a little bit more on how this works, as well as a few examples that we'll share. First, we work with you on a bespoke use case for your social intelligence project. And then we collect data on brands and consumers from a network of partners such as Nielsen and publicly available sources and APIs such as Reddit and Facebook. So all of this data is collected legally and ethically. In fact, the nature of our data is heavily focused on the brand and the consumer commentary with that. And we don't collect any personally identifiable information. Then our back-tested scoring platform, we call our Nichefire score, proprietary consumer sentiment scoring, and our classifier network of over 400 pre-trained classifiers measure all the relationships between a brand's digital marketing and the consumer's response. And if our classifier doesn't cover your unique business challenge, we'll build them for you using a bottom-up and a top-down research methodology. So I'll share more on how that works in our case study, though. But what's also nice about this approach is that you don't have to worry at all about logging into a platform or building any Booleans or training any AI models on your end. We cover that. And then lastly, Nichefire provides these results via raw data, tailored dashboards in your business intelligence solution of choice, whether it be like Tableau or Power BI, and we supply reporting that's built out by our expert analysts. But this approach really benefits you in a couple ways. One, the integration and activation of the insights are absolutely dynamic. In any of these delivery formats, we can help you adopt this data across your organization. And two, our consultative angle makes project approval processing incredibly fast, especially for banking, insurance, and healthcare where it's heavily regulated. And that's also because you don't need established logins or have to authenticate any applications that require approval. So now we're going to transition to the case study and demo part of our presentation. First up, we're going to share some insights we've uncovered for US Bank, and then we'll share a demonstration in Tableau of some data on brands in the plant-based meat category. So for this walkthrough, we put together a couple of questions we've been able to answer with the insights we generate. So each subsequent slide for this particular case study of the US Bank, we'll showcase an example. But before we do that, let's give a little bit of background. For this project, we've incorporated over 3 years of data on various social platforms across 30 top financial services brands. So our goals have been to find strategic means of capturing brand affinity and awareness, understanding how competitors are doing it and where they are weak or strong, and structuring new KPIs that the bank should consider for their efforts. So for this project, we used a number of pre-built classifiers in our sentiment scoring, as well as some customized performance metrics. But we also apply a bottom-up and a top-down research methodology to achieve even more insightful and customized results. Here's what that looks like. So when we are trying to unveil insights about your market, your consumers, or anything that matters to you, we assess the strategic data sets needed and conduct bottom-up research on that data first. So more or less, we let the data tell us what's important. But this research is a combination of an expert review on the subject. We'll have subject matter experts identify some of those commonalities, as well as an unsupervised machine learning method using word vectorization and latent Dirichlet allocation. So this allows us to more or less organically find those commonalities in bodies of text. And then, using our bottom-up approach and a genuine understanding of the business question we're trying to solve, we develop a top-down approach to discover trends on categories we have identified and partner with the subject matter experts to develop training data. So this uses an intercoder approach and uses transformer natural language processing. And this creates incredibly accurate multinomial classifier libraries. So here's a couple examples of some of the qualitative measurements we developed for US Bank. On the firm generated content side, we were able to kind of build out libraries that understand content context. So is this a product promotion? Is this corporate social responsibility? Being able to identify product features, any sort of partners, influencers, being able to identify consumer values, which are more or less that are portrayed in content, that are identifying the functional, emotional, and societal benefits that are being portrayed within that content, life events, seasonality, different types of calls to action. So we're measuring all that in the firm generated content. Then on the user generated content, we're developing classifier networks and methodologies that will identify the sort of service feedback that they're getting, identifying any reference products or competitors, whether it's implicit or explicit. A model we call post-response relevancy, which we'll showcase here in a little bit, as well as sentiment and expressiveness. So let's go into our first question. How can we build more genuine brand affinity with our audience? So you're going to be seeing a sentiment example here. So before I dive in, let me preface this with how we do sentiment, because sentiment is commonly demonized. Now, our sentiment scoring isn't a simple tag of positive, negative, or neutral like a lot of other solutions are portraying, but it captures more nuance and language by measuring sentiment on a spectrum of polarity. So every comment has a measurement to the degree in which it is positive or negative, and has a measurement to how passionate or how involved that language is from that commenter. So our methods have been benchmarked against the likes of, for accuracy, against the likes of Google Sentiment APIs, as well as Vader methodologies that are used in academia. So with that in mind, here's our insight. So what you're seeing on this graph on the right is a heat map where the color represents sentiment. So the darker the red, the more negative, the darker the green, more positive. This is measured by brand using our content type classifier library that is measuring the context of posted content. The insight here is going to focus on corporate social responsibility, though. So this is that highlighted box here in that red outline. But for a category that is supposed to build brand affinity, to have that much variance in sentiment seemed off to us, and so we explored that. Because social responsibility does generate positive sentiment, but especially in industries like banking, results can vary, and some consumers may respond negatively just out of spite. And what we found is that due to the highly scrutinized nature of banking, consumers are highly sensitive to any sort of virtue signaling. More or less content that is putting the brand first, such as posts that are saying like, we are proud to partner with this organization, or we donated X dollars to this organization. That sort of content actually receives much more skepticism and negativity than when corporate social responsibility content is featuring some sort of story. So for instance, when US Bank began sharing the stories of their employees and how they've contributed to the COVID-19 pandemic, they received a lot more praise compared to banks that more or less pat themselves in the back, so to speak. But our next question was, how can we establish differentiated product messaging in such a competitive space? Now, one of the difficulties in financial services is demonstrating to the consumer how their products are unique. Because the top 3 reasons why people choose their bank, and this is according to Financial Brand, is the proximity to them, if it was recommended by a friend or family member, or how good is their mobile app. This makes messaging that much more important. And so the graph on the right is actually going to demonstrate the content mix of several major banks on the basis of what consumer values they're appealing to with their products. So this is a classifier library that is measuring the approximate emotional, functional, or societal benefits that are portrayed in firm-generated content. And you can kind of see how prominent the rewarding, convenience, and assistance categories are. And ironically, at this same time period that the graph is showing, Chase Bank, Wells Fargo, Citibank, US Bank were all promoting similar credit card offerings that included cashback offerings for online purchases and delivery, all promoted in very similar ways. So this sort of insight can help you identify value propositions that are saturated, so that way you know to pivot. The next question is, how can other departments in our organization adopt these metrics? So COVID-19 has been an absolute whirlwind for banking, especially for PPP loans. That's if you're in the US, and customer relief programs such as debt solutions for credit cards, mortgages, and other loans. So we built out a custom classifier network that measures how banks are positioning themselves as it relates to COVID-19. And this is using a technology we call chain classifiers. So more or less, we first had to develop classifiers that identified whether or not content was related to COVID-19. And since the language for that is so nuanced that Booleans and keywords just did not work here. It only captured about 40 to 50% of the context there. And so with that, we developed additional classifier networks that we chain to that. So more or less, it's, if there is content that is related to categorized as COVID-19, related, then it'll classify in this way. If not, it classifies in that way. So I thought this graph was very interesting, though. So we're looking at a number of posts across the banking vertical. And you can see in these red boxes the massive increase in content related to different government resources. So this happened actually with the latest U.S. Stimulus bill that was passed just not too long ago. So many banks were talking about when consumers can expect their stimulus and how they'll know that's in the left box, and then how applications for PPP loans were conducted, and that's being shown in the right box. So looking at this sort of trend actually really helps other departments in that organization anticipate demand and explore areas where they can build immediate points of parity with other competitive services in such an environment where there's a massive need for immediacy, or to make sure that they aren't leaving their customers in the dark. And then the last question is, what sort of KPIs should we be considering as we build out new strategies? Now, this one's really fun. I love this one. And there are numerous examples that we could put here, but we just launched this new metric we call post-response relevancy. It's what I referenced earlier in my presentation. So if you're in a scrutinized industry, like banking, like higher ed, like insurance, you know just how overwhelming negative and irrelevant consumer commentary can be, especially as it's put on your content. So we built out a model that measures that. And this is using a unique classifier technology that compares bodies of text to one another. In this case, we're looking at comment text compared to post text, and it categorizes it on the basis of how it's related. And so the end result is an indication of whether or not the commentary on a post is actually on topic with that content or it's off topic with that content. And so the graph to the right is actually showing content subcategories in a different, in a more granular content type classifier library that we built out specific for banking. And this is going to measure more granular context of post-response relevancy. And so this is a really great way to understand the types of content that are going to develop genuine consumer interest versus just having content where people are just looking to complain, more or less, looking to kind of throw a commentary on how they can bash your brand. So now we'd like to show some of our work in action. We're going to share a small project example that we put together for Nestle, specifically their brand Sweet Earth, and it's a brand that they recently acquired. So there are three objectives for this project: to gain a better understanding of their competitors' positioning messaging, two, to understand how consumers engage and perceive competitors in the marketplace, and three, how are consumers responding to competitors' products as they are sold at stores and restaurants. So similar to US Bank, we built out bottom-up and top-down frameworks. And here are some of the qualitative measurements that we put together for this project. The first one being looking at consumer values. So similar to what US Bank is, the societal, emotional, functional benefits there. Looking at the identifying the characteristics of the products that are being promoted by the different brands, so that's product attributes, and the purchase mediums and occasions, in which the content is more or less recommending how they should purchase their product, for what use should they use their product. Should they enjoy it at breakfast? Should they enjoy it at date night? This kind of thing. Then for the user-generated content, we were exploring different things such as purchase intention and loyalty indicators, identifying feedback specific to products for that, identifying any references to retailers and competitors, and then employing our sentiment expressiveness models there. And so I'm going to X out of this presentation real quick and bring up an actual presentation in Tableau. So this is a real dashboard that we put together for Nestle using our backend technology plugged into Tableau. And for the sake of simplicity, we're just going to show some Facebook data today, but we'll focus in on the strategic analysis of the plant-based foods. And so starting off, we're going to look at the content and advertising of these brands, what they pushed out, and seeing where their strategic focus lies, and where the consumer engagement is associated with these efforts. And so right now, we're actually looking at the volume of content and ads posted by a brand. In this instance, we're looking at Beyond Meat, with the strategic focus in mind being content type. So that's our measurement of context, like I mentioned before. So this content tactic filter is actually here to allow us to select between the different classifier libraries which we trained, each with a specific strategic focus. And so for instance, let's check out product attribute. We can kind of see, so on categories more or less means there wasn't a product that they're promoting there, but we can kind of see spikes in, fulfilling and energizing. It's new and available. Maybe let's get to something a little bit more specific. Let's take a look at the purchase media. How are they promoting the ways in which consumers should purchase their products? And maybe let's focus this on total engagement. So we're looking at the consumer engagement associated with this sort of strategy. You see a huge spike here at grocery store, and you see a huge spike here at restaurant. Let's look into restaurants. So what are they promoting here, and what's being engaged? And what's going to happen is, one thing I love in Tableau is that we can make everything synced up together. So that way, if you click on something, it filters everything else. And so you can see this is a new promotion, with their friends at KFC to bring in the new Beyond Fried Chicken. It's making me hungry now. It's about lunchtime where I'm at. Let's take another quick example here. So let's look at, say, Impossible Foods. Food, nice. Let's take a look at consumption occasions, another library here. Like I mentioned before, consumption occasion is the occasion in which somebody should, a consumer should consume your product. And so, for instance, breakfast is huge here. You should enjoy this product at breakfast. What sort of content was that? And it's actually this promotion with Burger King for the new Impossible Croissant sandwich. And so you can really take this sort of insight and understand how Impossible Foods is trying to dominate the breakfast category on that side. How they're trying to, because they also have partnerships with Dunkin' and Burger King and a variety of other restaurants. So now let's dive into some of these, like the actual consumer response here. Now, first off, you'll see this graph. It looks a little overwhelming, but however, the purpose of this graph is to be filtered down. And so what this is measuring is each of these plots represent an individual comment in this data set that we're looking at. The sentiment score is what like I mentioned before. This is the nuance in which the commentary is measured on a scale from -1 to 1, how negative, how positive it is. But then this metric here, sentiment expressiveness, is identifying how passionate and how involved the consumer is with their commentary. And so with that in mind, here just a quick example. So for instance, we can see, Montreal, please, yes. These are very positive responses, but it's not providing context, or it's not providing much context in the sense of, what's the sort of expressiveness on that side. And so if we compare that to a comment that's on the right side, where it's more expressive, somebody wrote a damn book, more or less with their comment. But similar to the classifiers that we have above, we built out classifiers to identify various consumer feedbacks, intentions to purchase, different mentioned stores and products there. And so that way we can filter down to see, let's look at promotions and discounts. There's just a handful of comments here. For instance, we can highlight this, this one here. It says, Impossible Foods, love your food, but I was disappointed to see at Burger King they offered the Whoppers for 2 for $5 and did not consider the Impossible Whopper a Whopper. I think that's an incredibly cool insight right there. I love that. And we built out another dashboard to support this, so that way you can kind of see how are consumers responding to the retailer or responding to the restaurant as it relates to those brands. And so you can kind of click on this and say promotions and discounts again. We can see in more detail, just a couple comments, at least in this data set. But you see, like, for instance, what about us veg heads? Why don't we get any Impossible Whopper deals? So another individual that's disappointed with the Whopper, with that Whopper deal. So especially if I'm a competitor to Burger King, or if I'm a competitor to Beyond Meat, I'm seeing this as an opportunity to kind of fill in a gap and be able to collab, like that. I could use that as a way to collaborate with my retailer, or collaborate with my restaurant that is selling my product, to make sure we don't get that sort of disconnect from the consumer there. So some really cool stuff on that side to kind of showcase there. But what I'm going to do now, get back to the presentation here. So that being said, that is my last slide. I really thank you all for joining my presentation today. If you'd like to see more data, or if you'd like to learn more about what we do, you're welcome to reach out to me. We also have a virtual booth going on at this demo day, so please feel free to visit us. We'll be around. And without further ado, again, thank you.
Hello.
Welcome back, Julian.
Hello, let me take that cardigan off. I was trying to, it's starting to cool down here in Scotland. I've got a blow heater on underneath my seat, but I'm just trying to keep warm now. Brilliant. That was excellent. Thank you so much for that, Michael. Could you stop sharing your screen, and then everyone can see our beautiful faces in the full screen? There we go. Thank you very much. That was great. So we have had some questions come in. So let's start off with them, and then you and I can have a chat too. So if you have any questions for Michael, please pop them into the chat or the Q&A function in the stage, and we will get to those. So Eric is saying here, Impossible Foods, in case you don't know, in UK and elsewhere, makes plant-based hamburger meat that uses genetically engineered ingredient that makes it taste and bleed like meat. It is very convincing. Okay, so not really a question, but more of a statement there. Thank you, Eric. Let's see here if we've got anything else. Sorry, there's so many tabs in this that... No, okay. So please get your questions in to Michael. So Michael, tell me a little bit more about the work that you're doing. So you're helping organizations be able to communicate more effectively, is basically what you're all about.
At a bare bones way, yes, absolutely. How can we help you identify unique ways in which you can capture more market share, capture better brand affinity and awareness by looking at how by looking at your direct competitors, your indirect competitors, or even external market influences, whether it's regulatory standards, alternative markets, and stuff like that. So we find that as an incredible tool to have in your social intelligence stack, is to being able to understand how your external influences are impacting your own business.
No, that is good. So Michael and I, we chat quite a lot because he is actually part of our certification program just now, and he's also a member at the Social Intelligence Lab. So we talk quite a bit, and he is going to publish next week a new article about the different types of tech in social data analysis, because it is changing, and we're all talking social intelligence, but we're not all doing the same thing. Do you want to talk a bit more about those three categories that you came up with in that blog post? Yeah,
well, so the categories that are typically in consideration. We understand now there's a lot of tools that doing great work on this side. I know UScan and Audience have presentations at this at this, and they do some great work in audience intelligence. And then there's your social listening platforms that are really doing great work in exploring different topics. You're doing topical analysis, being able to explore different trends and that sort of thing. By diving into that, those are your platforms like your Brand Watcher, your Talk Walkers, that sort of thing. And then there's also your execution part, where you have platforms like Sprinkler or Hootsuite or Khoros, where you're using that to deploy and manage your campaigns, manage your presence, that sort of thing. Is doing that sort of piece. Where we're trying to really kind of bolster up the understanding is that there is this intermediary category there too that should be put into consideration. That's called market validation, or at least that's what I call it, market validation.
Okay.
That incorporates your consumer your competitive benchmarking. That incorporates your intelligence on the market. That incorporates being able to understand external influences, those threats, those opportunities, and stuff like that could be impacting your business. And that's kind of where we really specialize in. And there's a lot of great tools that do that, but that's kind of like where we lie, is like being able to help people understand the impact that those external influences are having on your brand.
Okay, brilliant. No, thank you for that. So we've got a quick question in. So thanks for the interesting presentation. There you go. You can smile now. Can you tell us a bit more about social media, the social media platforms you typically use in your analyses, and how do you access that data?
Mm-hmm. So all of our data is accessed either through the APIs that they have available. So for instance, Facebook is a very prominent platform that we collect data from. We have to register and verify our application with their platform. So that involves, like putting out our business use case, putting out and having them approve that. So that way we can get special access to certain types of data. So in this instance, they have data sets you can get for competitive benchmarking and stuff like that. And then other data sets like Twitter, like Reddit, have really robust readily available APIs that you can tap into. And so we do have our networks tapping into APIs, but then we also partner with alternative vendors that get us even more unique case data, or even getting more volume of data for different use cases, stuff like that. What's really interesting too is so we're incorporating some unique data sets as well, such as so we're actually a Nielsen connected partner. Mm-hmm. Meaning that we're one of the few social intelligence platforms that actually has access to the retail measurement service data. And so we're able to incorporate actual sales measurements alongside our social intelligence intelligence metrics on that side too. So that's kind of how we collect data.
Okay, great. So this is quite a new thing then. So let's talk a little bit about that Nielsen data and how you're meshing it, merging it, blending it, however you want to talk about it, with your social intelligence. So how does that work? What types of projects and questions are you answering? And how are you making impact for the business using that data source?
Mm-hmm. So we're actually conducting a research study at the moment. So we're collaborating with Nielsen, a couple other vendors, and the University of Cincinnati and the Old Dominion University back in the U.S. Mm-hmm. To conduct research on what we call retailer perception and developing an index to kind of help identify how consumer behavior and brand perception can potentially make impacts on sales lift or sales decreases in whatever given markets. And so it's a really interesting project. We're still in the midst of that. But we've been able to kind of conduct some use cases, pilots and stuff like that using Nielsen data. In fact, our Nichefire score, when we collaborate with different products that are sold at retailers, especially B2C products, a lot of our Nichefire scoring is back tested against those consumption metrics. So that way you're kind of getting some sort of correlation there, to kind of like more or less having some sort of way to kind of validate that performance that you've had. It's kind of a nice, unique way to kind of look at how to benchmark.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So let's talk about some of the projects that you've been working in and some of the impact that you've had. So we're all about impact here at the Social Intelligence Lab and being able to demonstrate that. So can you talk us through some of the projects that you've been working on and what kind of results you've been getting?
Mm-hmm. So, well, U.S. Bank's our largest client at the moment, and there's a lot of great data that we've been able to put together for them. In the presentation, we had talked a bit about. I'm just kind of referring back to some of my slides real quick. So in our data that we've been able to collect and work through with them, we've been able to kind of help them understand and align campaigns in ways to be able to approach diversity inclusion. Being able to identify ways and to position themselves like that, identifying the anomalies in negative and positive sentiment in their industry. So one thing about banking is that if you work in banking, you know this very well. Or if you work in a regulated industry, you know this very well, especially one that's scrutinized as banking. A lot of people are just really, really pounding the bank with just negative commentary about how much they either hate the bank or, or some sort of, arbitrary political rhetoric that, that has to do with banking or how much they think they're a scam, that sort of thing. So you get a lot of those. It doesn't necessarily mean that their services are bad or, that it's not necessarily commentary that is, not necessarily commentary that is, what's a good way to say it? It's not necessarily, or it's commentary that is people are just upset with that sort of topic and that sort of thing. And so one of the things we've been helping them understand is being able to kind of dictate the sort of storytelling in their content in a way that is kind of generating more consumer interest, more genuine consumer interest. So a good example would be, so like for instance, there's a lot of banks, at least in the U.S., that partner with organizations like Women in Tech or Girls Who Code. That's it's a program that's really supportive of young women that are trying to achieve a career in STEM technologies, that sort of thing. And rather than approaching that sort of corporate social responsibility partnerships, with we're proud to partner with this. One of the things that we were talking about is like, you should tell the story of young Addison, who's in 6th grade. In the U.S. that's a young child who's in 6th grade, and aspires to build her first mobile app, and work with U.S. Bank on their UI UX team because of this program. That sort of storytelling, that sort of kind of personalizing, that sort of strategy generates a lot of brand affinity, and through that you're actually developing unique differentiators for your own brand in a sense. So for instance, showing your support for a particular cause could be a differentiator for your brand. Like another great example there is Bank of the West. They have a lot of significant partnerships that are focused on climate change and sustainability, and they really just dominate that sort of category, and that kind of helps them differentiate. It helps people understand, like, if you work with us or you bank with us, you're also helping the environment, that sort of thing. Okay, great.
So you mentioned something quite interesting there that I think we should pick up on as well. So when you're working, so you're not just providing, you work in a more consultancy based way. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you work?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a hybrid. So we built out all of our own technology. So think of our technology as this big brain that we just continuously train, we continue to build new models for, and we develop like a research process that helps solve specific use cases and problems that clients have. One of the reasons why we're taking this approach too is just we found that a lot of companies, a lot of industries have very unique nuances that make their business different, or that need special attention that a more generic approach is not able to kind of capture for that. And so we consult with them on the specific use cases. The way we specifically work though is we'll collaborate with them on a particular project that'll be like an ongoing project, and establish what the data is going to be for that, establish what the sort of technology network is going to look like for that. And then on a monthly basis or an annual basis or however frequently you want, we'll just supply you data. It'll be packaged up in your business intelligence solution of choice. So if you work with Tableau, we'll integrate right into there. US Bank, for instance, we collaborate with them on Tableau a lot, and allows them to just kind of share out those dashboards and share out that data throughout their organization. So it's just very easy to activate and integrate. Or we can just provide reporting, just because we know for a fact that a lot of enterprises are using a multitude of tools at a time. They're using, they have a number of people that are working on specific problems. And so being able to have, just kind of reporting that comes in, from experts from this technology, that's very helpful for them in terms of, they can have a hands-off approach in getting insights there. So that sort of approach as well allows us a bit of flexibility with how they want to work with us. And so if you're just like, hey, I just need to be told what to do, that sort of thing, we can work with you like that. Or if hey, we need to dive into data, we need raw data, and we want to work with you on a regular basis, they can subscribe to our service, that sort of thing, and work with them with that.
Okay, no, that's good. That's good to know. Because it is slightly different from what we've been seeing this morning. The other thing that I want to touch upon is because it's the thing that we get asked a lot, and you and I, we have a new series coming out at the Social Intelligence Lab, which I'm calling Decipher the Dashboard, because we know that folks have a really hard time when they go in and they see all of these amazing visualizations and data and things, and they just don't know what they're trying to tell them or how to use and apply it in their work. So Michael and I have already recorded one of these. So let's hop back into that mode a minute, Michael, and let's just talk about kind of some of the visualizations and how you're taking what you're seeing from that data and then transforming that into a campaign for for US Bank that talks about female STEM. How do you take it from the data into actually being able to apply it into the content?
Well, actually, this kind of ties into what we were just talking about in the previous question, because one of the whole reasons why we decided, because we were initially trying to be more of a software as a service product when we started our business. And now we've kind of transferred into, how can we provide a bit more of a customizable or bespoke solution, so that way they can kind of glean the insights more rapidly. And we actually found just like working in solutions like Tableau is sufficient enough in terms of providing data visualization. It's incredibly customizable, and we have some great experts that we collaborate with to build out those dashboards, and myself included. I'm quite a heavy Tableau user myself, but then it also goes with other dashboard business intelligence solutions. So we're able to really customize that dashboard solution, but then also too, having this sort of bespoke approach as well allows us to understand the sort of stakeholders that need to understand the data. I'll use US Bank as another example here, because I think this ties in really well. One of the critical components that they wanted to incorporate in their data was something of what they called an executive summary. Okay. And so the stakeholder that we were collaborating with was like, I need to be able to have a way in which I can just, on any given day, just glance at that and just very, very quickly see how to visualize that data and stuff like that. And so we had, so what we did was just put together a nice table of their core metrics, the top 10 competitors they want to look at, then below that perceptual map that is comparing two different time periods. And so that perceptual map is actually, heavily inspired by Michael Porter's, competitive analysis approach there too. So that way it's a great way to do that. So there's some research inspiration on that side too. But it's a very great way to kind of quickly glean the insights. And the other thing too is that like there's so many different types of visualizations out there, but then there's also a lot of those visualizations are kind of affecting the way in which we understand the data. So simple, like there's some things where it's just like maybe a table just makes sense there. You don't need a big web graph or something like some crazy web graph, or maybe maybe just a bar graph is fine. Bar graph is like by far one of the best standards for analyzing data in a way that is not going to be misinterpreted, or in a way that's not going to be biased. And so that's kind of how we kind of build that sort of visualization, is understanding who's looking at this. How are we going to be able to simplify the way in which they achieve the insight, and then being able to activate that from there, that sort of thing.
Brilliant. Well, we've got a couple of minutes left. Okay. Is there any final questions for Michael? Come on. I know it takes 7 seconds for them to actually come through after they've been typed. There's a slight delay on that. Is there anything else that we should know about Nichefire before we go then, Michael?
I'm sure there's a lot, but I mean, if you're interested in checking out some more, or if you would like to maybe see some data or something like that, I'd be happy to share. So, like for instance, an example dashboard, I'd be happy to share access to that, so that way if you're interested, you can take a look or peruse through the data yourself. If you're interested in taking a look at some reports, or maybe getting a proof of concept with us, feel free to reach out. Again, we do have a booth here as well.
Yeah, so there is a booth. The expo is closed for today, but we open again tomorrow. So there's 3 chances to come in and speak to the guys at Nichefire. You can also just ping them an email. So if you click on get in touch, when they're not in the booth, it pings them an email, and Michael will be able to pick that up and come back to you directly. So we've got one quick question, which will come in because it's come in before the time. So how do you help clients use the insights the AI produces?
So again, a lot of it has to do with being able to first assign that particular use case with a model that's going to work for them. And so, for instance, if we're trying to understand, so it really depends on the use case. So for instance, if we're trying to understand, like, hey, what sort of competitive influences in, say, we're looking at Reddit data, or we're focusing on, I don't know, sustainable products or something like that. help me understand what sort of direct competitors we should be putting into our consideration, indirect competitors we should be putting into consideration, and external markets or external influences we should be considering. We help them assign those sort of data sets to explore that. And so, for instance, in that sort of use case, we'd help them dictate, or help them identify, data sources that we want to apply here can be focused on user-generated content, maybe some more candid results where we can find forums where people are talking about these things. So looking at Reddit, looking at different blogs or forum topics, that sort of thing like that. First assessing the nature of the data is a great way to start that off. And then approaching from there, we always start off with kind of that bottom-up approach where we're trying to let the data tell us what sort of commonalities are in there. Mm-hmm. And so we'll kind of devise the sort of structures for our classifiers, the structures for the sort of insights we're providing by doing an analysis, whether doing a little bit manually with some textual data, or using an unsupervised methodology like word factorization or something like that to devise those commonalities, and then taking a top-down approach from there just to be able to kind of more concretely identify, measure those sort of tactics. And so a lot of the classifiers you see here are actually a product of that, being able to kind of identify organically those commonalities in that content. And so that helps us identify the sort of structures that come from the AI, so that way we can interpret that for them.
Okay, brilliant.
Question.
Thank you very much for that. So we are out of time. Thank you. And that's Sydney saying thank you for a thought-provoking session. So thank you very much, Michael. You will be able to get in touch with the Nichefire team. You can click on the expo and just shoot them an email. You can also go into the event chat and then search for people and speak to the team behind the scenes, or you can speak to them when they're at their booth tomorrow. So Michael, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the event. It was a pleasure to have you and to share some more about Nichefire. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.